Hello. Okay, welcome again. Today we have the May June paper 2-1 question paper. All right, so let's see this paper and discuss the correct answers. Okay, we start from number 1 as usual. Number 1 says, which characteristics of living things requires carbon dioxide to diffuse into the leaf? Then from the choices, we've been given excretion, movement, nutrition, and respiration. Now mind you, this needs carbon dioxide to diffuse into the leaf. All right. Excretion is removal of waste products of metabolism, so it cannot be. Movement involves moving from one part to another, all right? Nutrition, this one here, requires carbon dioxide so as the plant can make its own food under the process of photosynthesis. So the characteristic that requires carbon dioxide to diffuse into it is nutrition. While respiration, this is also a breakdown of glucose in the presence of oxygen to give out carbon dioxide as a waste product. So from here, we find that our answer is going to be nutrition. So we'll circle nutrition as such. Okay, number 2 says, which set of features is characteristics only for birds? Hair and wings, hard-shelled eggs and feathers, scales and soft-shelled eggs, wings and soft-shelled eggs. Now, we have to understand that birds usually give hard-shelled eggs. So C and D won't have a chance. Then we have A. Hair and wings, we don't have hair on a bird, we have feathers. So B will be our choice, that it's hard-shelled eggs and feathers. So we'll choose B. And then, which structures are found in both plants and animal cells? We have A, cell walls and cell membranes, nuclei and cell walls, cytoplasm and chloroplast, cell membranes and nuclei. Alright, so in animal cells, we do not have cell walls. Alright, we don't have cell walls in animal cells. So A and B cannot be our choices. When we go to C, we find that we have cytoplasm and chloroplast. Chloroplast is also found in our plants. Alright, since animals do not make their own food. Alright, they do not photosynthesize. So our choice here is going to be cell membrane and nuclei here. Okay. Number 4 says, a student made the following statements about the movement of ions by active transport. 1. It is the movement of particles from low concentration to high concentration. It is the movement of particles from high concentration to low concentration. It requires the use of energy from respiration. It can only take place in living cells. Alright. So here, we need to know which statements are correct. All right, from the statements that have been listed here, we know that active transport is the movement of particles from low concentration to high concentration. So number 1 is literally correct. It is the movement of particles from high concentration. No, active transport is usually against concentration gradient. So number 2 cannot be correct. Then yes, it requires energy because it's movement against concentration gradient. So number 3 is correct, and it's taking place in living cells. So 1, 2, and 1, 3, and 4, right? Which is A here. Number 5 says a DNA molecule contains pairs of bases. What is the correct combination of the pair of bases? So the DNA molecule is usually paired as CG and AG. So that is the correct pairing of these bases. So from here you have AG, no, CA, no, GT, no, and then we have D as T and A. Okay, so D here will be our correct choice. Number 6 says, what is the taste for protein? So we know that taste for protein is usually known as a burette test. Alright, it's known as a burette test, and of course, when we do the burette test, what we get is a sample turning purple. Alright, so after we add some chemicals there, the sample turns purple. Benedict's is a test for reducing sugar. Alright, so Benedict's is a test for reducing sugar, and when we heat, we don't get a purple color change. So Benedict's cannot be the answer. And of course, I said the answer is from blue to purple. Alright, so the test for protein is burette, and of course, the change that we will see will be blue to purple. Question 7 says, the graph shows how enzyme activity is affected by temperature. We have enzyme activity on the y-axis, we have temperature on the x-axis. The question says, why is enzyme activity lower at 55 degrees centigrade than at 40 degrees centigrade? Now, we know that as temperature increases, it denatures the enzyme by destroying the protein bonds that make the enzyme. Alright, so when the bonds are completely broken, we find that the enzyme is not going to work at all because it has been deformed. Now, the question says, why is enzyme activity lower at 55 degrees centigrade than it is at 40 degrees centigrade? Okay, so heat has killed the enzyme has been used up, the reactants are moving faster, the substrate is less likely to fit into the active site because the enzyme has been denatured or destroyed. So the bonds are not as they were before. So we take D as our answer. Question 8 says, which description of adaptations of photosynthesis are correct for sponge mesophyll tissue? Alright, so we have 2 columns here. Air spaces for efficient gas exchange, long rectangular cells to absorb sunlight. Which descriptions of adaptations for photosynthesis are correct for sponge mesophyll tissues? We have to choose that. Air spaces for efficient gas exchange and long rectangular cells to absorb sunlight. Alright. Our sponge mesophyll cells are like having air spaces for a gas exchange. Are they long and rectangular? No. Long and rectangular cells are the parasite cells. They're the ones that appear a bit rectangular. Air spaces, sponge mesophyll cells are not air spaces. Okay, they form air spaces, but they are not the air spaces themselves. Alright, so again, air spaces. B, air spaces for efficient gas exchange. Yes, they form air spaces for efficient gas exchange. Long rectangular, no, they are not long rectangular. And then again, air spaces for efficient gas exchange. Yes, they are not long rectangular again. And then they are not long rectangular, but they form air spaces. So the correct choice would be here. They form air spaces in between them for efficient gas exchange, but they are not long and rectangular. Question 9 says, the table shows the recommended daily allowance of some nutrients for young children. The table also shows the masses of these nutrients eaten by a child in one day. Okay, so here we have the recommended daily intake for vitamin C is 50, vitamin D 10, iron 11, calcium 260. Mass eaten per day, we have vitamin C 54, vitamin D 5, iron 11, and calcium 150. Then the question says, which conditions will the child be at risk of developing if they consume the same diet for a long period of time? If they consume the same diet for a long period of time. Anemia, not having enough red blood cells. 2, rickets. 3, scurvy. Alright, so scurvy is due to lack of vitamin C. Rickets is due to lack of vitamin D, and anemia would be due to lack of what? Iron. So from here, we can see that the child had enough vitamin C. We don't expect them to develop scurvy. Okay? Then after that, they also got sufficient mass of iron, which means we don't expect them to have anemia. They have good amount of what? Calcium. No, they have less amount of calcium in comparison to the required daily intake, but also they have less amount of what? Of vitamin D in comparison to the required intake. Alright, so from here, we expect that they will develop weak bones, which can result into what? Into rickets. So our choice here will be D. Number 10 says, which term is used for the uptake and use of nutrients by the cell? Now we are talking about uptake and use of nutrients. So the nutrients are now being used. That process is usually known as assimilation, because now the nutrients have already been absorbed by the blood. Now they are being used by what? By the cell. That is assimilation. Absorption, this is uptake of nutrients into the blood. Alright. Digestion, this is removal first products of digestion, and digestion is taking in of food. So our choice here is B. What is the function of trypsin in digestion? So trypsin, this is one of the enzymes that breaks down protein. Alright, it breaks down protein, but it usually breaks down protein in the small intestine because it's produced from the pancreas. right? Yeah, so it breaks down protein in the small intestine here. Okay, number 12 says the diagram shows the structure of a villus, which label shows the lacteus. So the lacteus is usually the central part, the mid part of what? Of the villi. And the mid part of the villi is this thing over here. All right, so here again, the answer will be C. Yeah. Number 13 says, which graph shows the effect of humidity in the air on the rate of transpiration in a plant? Now we have to know that as the amount of humidity increases, the rate of transpiration decreases. All right. As humidity increases, the rate of transpiration does what? Does decrease. Okay. Yeah. So if you look at this part over here, that rate of transpiration, percent of humidity. So percent of humidity is like, okay, it's like rate of transpiration is increasing with percent of humidity. That can't be. If you look at this part over here, that at certain amount of humidity, the rate of transpiration is high. This is also not correct. But if you look at this part here, B, we can see rate of transpiration is kind of falling as rate of humidity is what? Is increasing. When we go to this diagram over here, also it's like as percent of humidity is increasing, rate of transpiration increases at certain parts or at certain times due to the percent of humidity present, which is not correct also. So at the end of the day, rate of transpiration is supposed to decrease or fall with increase in percentage of humidity. So this would be a correct choice. Number 14 says, in some countries, spring is the time of the year when daffodil plants have green leaves and produce flowers. Which part of daffodil plant act as the source and sink in spring? All right, so we have been told that they have green leaves. So because they're having green leaves, it means the leaves are photosynthesizing. So the leaves will be the sources and they produce flowers. Then the flowers will be the sink, which means they are storing the products for photosynthesis. So leaves will be sources and flowers will be sinks, which is C. Yeah. Okay. In a fish, what is the sequence of structures that blood passes through after it leaves the heart? Now, in a fish, the kind of circulation that is taking place is usually single circulation. So blood goes from the heart to the what? To the gills for gas exchange. Then after it leaves the gills, it goes to the all other body parts. All right, it's the oxygenated blood will then pass through all other body parts before it returns to the heart, whereas it will turn to the heart with blood that has what? Carbon dioxide. Then the heart will again push this blood with lots of carbon dioxide to the gills for gas exchange. Then after gas exchange, it will then move through the body and then return to the heart. So that is how circulation takes place inside the fish. So in a fish, what sequence of structures that blood passes through after it leaves the heart? It will go to the gills, then it will go to the body muscles, then after there it will return back to the heart. So our choice will be A. Number 16 says, the diagram shows what happens in the body during active immunity. Alright, so active immunity, it means an infection gets into the body, and after it gets into the body now will produce antibodies to fight that particular infection. And of course, it will also keep memory cells. Alright, in case there's another attack of a similar pathogen, the memory cells will just be produced to counterattack that infection. Okay, so pathogens enter into the body, then W are detected. All right, so then lymphocytes become active. After they become active, X destroys the pathogen directly. Marking of pathogens occurs so they can be destroyed by Y. Z are produced for long-term immunity. So what is detected? When a pathogen enters the body, it has its own proteins, all right? The proteins that are in it are known as antigens. So pathogens enter the body, then the antigens are detected. After the antigens have been detected, the lymphocytes become active. Now, when they become active, X destroy the pathogens directly. These are antibodies, because lymphocytes produce antibodies. So antibodies destroy the pathogen directly. Then marking of pathogens occurs so that they can be destroyed by Y. Okay, so we have something known as phagocytes. All right, phagocytes mark it so that it can be destroyed by what? By the antibodies. Then Z are produced for long-term immunity. Now, whatever is produced for long-term immunity is what is known as memory cells. It remains in there in case there's any other infection. So W are detected, which we have said they are antigens. So W has to represent antigens, which is here. All right, then lymphocytes become active, and then X destroys pathogen directly. X have to be antibodies. Yeah, either C or D. X have to be antibodies. Then marking of pathogens occurs so that they can be destroyed by Y. Y have said these are phagocytes. So we go to D here. And then Z are memory cells. So our choice would be D. Okay, number 17 says cholera is a disease caused by bacterium Vibrio cholerae, which produces a toxin in infected person's gut. What is the effect of the toxin? So the toxin lowers the water potential. It lowers the water potential inside the intestines. All right. So after it lowers the water potential, it causes water to move into the intestines from what? From neighboring cells. All right, and at the end of the day, causing the diarrhea. All right, so the toxin causes water to enter the gut from the blood. All right, yeah. Why? Because there'll be a chloride ions inside the gut, which will lower the water potential. Hence, water has to move into the gut. So we'll say C. The graph shows how volume of air in lungs changes when a person is breathing at rest. We have volume of air and we have time. Which processes are occurring to change the volume of air at point marked X? All right, so point marked X. Okay, so the diaphragm is relaxing and the external intercostal muscles are relaxing. The diaphragm is contracting. The diaphragm is contracting and the internal intercostal muscles are contracting. The diaphragm is contracting and the internal intercostal muscles are relaxing. The diaphragm is relaxing and the internal intercostal muscles are relaxing. So at point X, we see that the volume of air is now going down. All right, we had it high over here, but it's now beginning to decrease, going down. So if it's decreasing, going down, it means that this person is now preparing to breathe out. So if you're preparing to breathe out, the diaphragm is supposed to relax. When it relaxes, or when it starts to relax, that's when the volume becomes less. All right, but at the same time, as the diaphragm is relaxing, the external intercostal muscles also relax, so that the lid can move inward and the air can be forced to move out, so that its volume can decrease. So here we'll choose A as our choice. The processes listed occur in living organisms. We have cell division, diffusion, muscle contraction, and osmosis. Which processes require energy from respiration? All right, so cell division is one of the processes, mitosis and meiosis. They use energy, but diffusion is just movement from high concentration to low concentration. It doesn't use energy at all. Muscle contraction also, it's a process that involves use of what? Of energy. But osmosis does not use energy. So the processes are 1 and 3. 1 and 3, B. So we'll choose B is our answer over here. Number 20 says, what is the role of glomerulus? So glomerulus, this is a network of blood capillaries inside the Bowman's capsule of the nephron. And its work is to filter the blood so that only certain big particles do not pass through it, and certain smaller particles like water, salts, and urea can pass through it. So the role is filtration of water, glucose, urea, and ions from the blood. That is the role of glomerulus. The diagram shows a synapse, as we can see it here. We have neuron number 1, and at the same time we have neuron number 2. All right, we have parts labeled P, Q, R, S over here. Now, what are the labeled parts? Okay, P is a vesicle, Q is a neurotransmitter, R is the synaptic gap, and S is the receptor. All right, yeah, so we have to look. P has to be a vesicle, either D or C, and then Q is the neurotransmitter, so it's C, and then R is the synaptic gap, and S is the receptor. So our choice here will be C. Okay, number 22 says, which row shows the function of rod cells? Rod cells, these ones here, are usually sensitive to night vision. All right, and of course, they give a black and white image, so they are not colored at all. So our answer here will definitely be B. Okay, number 23 says, the diagram shows the position of 2 endocrine glands in the human body. All right, these endocrine glands are found just above the kidney, so they're adrenal. Okay, what is the response of the body to the hormone released from these glands? So adrenaline is a hormone that prepares for fight or flight. All right, yeah. So okay, what will be the response? A decrease in heart rate. No, you cannot fight or flight. Have a flight when you have a decrease in heart rate. A decrease in glucose concentration. No, it stimulates increase in glucose concentration to bring about energy. Increase in pupil diameter, yes. The development of secondary sexual characteristics, no. This is the role of testosterone hormone or the estrogen hormone in females. So the choice for this will be C. Number 24 says, what is the response of human body to overheating? A is vasoconstriction of arterioles. When we say vasoconstriction, it means narrowing of arterioles. This isn't correct, because when it's overheating, the arterioles open up or dilate so that heat is removed or lost. Vasoconstriction of veins, also known, is we are talking about dilation when it's hot. Vasodilation of arterioles, yes. Vasodilation of veins is not veins, it's the arterioles. So number 24 here is C. Vasodilation of arterioles. Okay, number 25 says, what is an example of phototropism? So phototropism, this is a growth towards light. Okay, growth of the rooted direction of gravity, that is gravitropism. Growth of shoot towards light, that is phototropism. Release of energy from glucose using light energy. Release of energy or making of energy, it's respiration. Okay, but using light, it means here we are talking of something about photosynthesis, making glucose from photosynthesis. Synthesis of glucose using light, this is photosynthesis. This should be respiration. So our choice is B. Number 26 says, which statement describes the effect of antibiotics? So antibiotics, these ones here are meant to kill or to destroy bacteria. They act on bacteria. They can act maybe by clumping the bacteria together or by destroying the cell walls of the bacteria, and they do not affect viruses. So antibiotics do not affect bacteria. That's incorrect. Antibiotics affect or kill bacteria but not affect viruses. Yes. Antibiotics kill both bacteria and viruses. No. Antibiotics kill viruses but not affect bacteria. No. Antibiotics usually kill bacteria but do not affect viruses. So that is B. Number 27 says, the diagram of one parent hydra growing and releasing an offspring from the side of its body. So here we have the diagram. Parent hydra started releasing an offspring and the offspring grew from its side. Which row is correct? Now, because it's from the very parent we are getting the offspring, this is a sexual reproduction. All right, yeah, and because it's a sexual reproduction, we expect the offspring to look exactly like what? Like their parents. So parent and offsprings are genetically identical, and we can see the offspring is looking exactly like the parent. Involves a sexual reproduction? Yes. So that is our choice for question 27. Question 28 says, the diagram shows the changing concentrations of some hormones involved in the menstrual cycle. So here we have our graph and we have different hormones, all right? Which letters identify the two hormones? Identify two of the hormones. Which letters are okay? So we have hormone W and hormone Y. All right. So we have this hormone which is existing at a very low amount. This one here, and then it picks up after day 14 after ovulation. This is progesterone, and then we have this hormone over here which is a bit high when it's almost ovulation period. This is follicle stimulating hormone, and then we have this hormone which grows very high after the menstrual period. It lowers a little bit and then again it increases after ovulation. This hormone here is estrogen hormone. And then we have this hormone over here which peaks very high. This is luteinizing hormone. So W should be luteinizing hormone, then this one here should be estrogen hormone. Right? So W is, the choice is going to be B. Okay. Question 29 says the diagram shows the chromosomes in the nucleus of a cell that divides by mitosis. So mitosis brings about a cell that looks identical to the parent cell. Which diagram shows the chromosomes in the nucleus of one of the daughter cells produced? Okay, so the daughter cell should have what the parent cell exactly had. Alright, so here we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, what should you expect in the daughter cell should have the same thing? This has 4, this has 4, this has 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then D has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we expect C to be the answer because it divided by mitosis, so it has to look exactly like the parent. C. Okay, question 30 says a farmer bred together male cattle with white hair and female cattle with red hair. All offspring produced had round hair, a mixture of red and white. He then repeated the bred together. He bred together 2 round cattle, and the offspring were in ratio of 1 red, 2 round, 1 white. What explains why the farmer obtained this ratio? Okay, the red phenotype is dominant white phenotype. The round phenotype is an example of codominance. The round phenotype is dominant, and the red and white phenotype, no, it cannot be dominant over them. Red and white would not be seen. The white phenotype is dominant over red and white. No, so when we say something is dominant, it means it exists. Phenotypically, we can see it for a dominant, and a recessive, it means it is in an organism but it is not expressed. All right, so for it to have expression of both, it means both of them are now codominant. They're all dominant. None is recessive to the other. All right, so that's why they are being expressed all together. So when you say white is phenotype, it means red should not be seen. And when you say round is dominant, we have to know that round is a mix of red and white, so it can be. And when we say red phenotype is dominant, then red should only have been seen instead of white. But round phenotype is an example for codominance because we have both features expressed. Okay. Phagocytes and neurons are 2 types of specialized cells. Now, specialized cells are cells that perform a specific function. What statements are correct? Phagocytes and neurons express the same genes. Both types of cells have the same genes. They can't have the same genes because they perform different roles. Both types of cells only express the genes that make the protein needed. Yes. Both types of cells express the genes that do what? That make the proteins needed for the cell to function. All right, but apart from that, they express, both types of cells have the same genes. Both types of cells express the same genes. No, they don't express the same genes. Both types of cells have the same genes. Yeah, we have the same genes in our bodies, but these cells usually express only what the body needs at that time. That's why a phagocyte will only express the genes needed for it to act as a white blood cell. Of course, it's a white blood cell, so attacking antibiotics, attacking antigens, stuff like that. While neurons will express the genes that are needed for what? For transportation. So they have to be C. Number 32 says the table shows some features of leaves. Which leaf is adapted to survive in hot, dry habitat? Okay, leaves that are living in dry habitats, first of all, they have few number of stomata. But then they have thick and wax cuticle to minimize water loss. And also the surface area is supposed to be small so as to do what? To minimize water loss. So that would be a C. And then number 33 says, which row correctly describes a type of selection? Artificial selection usually involves humans because it's their choice. Production of farmed animals that produce lots of milk, that's a human choice. Artificial selection, humans are involved, yes. Production of bacteria that are resistant to antibiotics, no. Human does not control this feature of bacteria becoming resistant. Natural selection, humans are involved, no. Humans are not involved in natural selection. Alright. Natural selection, humans not involved, yes. Production of wild animals with long necks to reach tree levels, yes. So D is going to be the correct answer because it just changes within the animal itself. Alright. Okay. Question 34 says, which statement about pyramid of energy for a food chain is correct? About pyramid of energy, so it shows how energy is lost at each trophic level. It shows the energy stored at each trophic level. It shows the input of energy from the principal source. It shows the total energy stored within an ecosystem. Pyramid of energy usually shows the energy present in each trophic level. So energy stored in each trophic level. Alright, yeah. And that is going to be B. Okay. Number 35 says the food web shows part of an ecosystem. Alright, so we have it here expressing what? An ecosystem. Which row shows the number of secondary consumers and the number of tertiary consumers? Okay, so secondary consumers, they are the ones that feed on primary consumers, alright? And tertiary consumers, they are the ones that feed on what? On secondary consumers. Okay, so here we have to look at secondary consumers. Number of secondary consumers, alright. So here we have, this is primary, a producer, primary consumer. This is secondary consumer, 1. Okay, this is a producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer. A producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer. A producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer. Producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer. Producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer. Yeah, 4. So secondary consumers, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are secondary consumers. Now let's go to the tertiary consumers. Tertiary consumers feed on what? On secondary consumers. So you have producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, 1. Okay, we have producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, the second. We have producer, primary consumer, second consumer, tertiary consumer. Alright, so you have again here producer, primary consumer, producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, the same. Producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, the same. Producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer. And then here we had producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer equals tertiary consumer. So tertiary consumer is only 1 over here. As we can see, if we start from here, we have this 1 primary producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. If we go from here, it's producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer again. If we go from here again, it's producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, the same, all well. And then when we come here, it's producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary, the same. Then here again, producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, the same. Then producer, primary consumer, then here it will act as the secondary consumer. So the choice is going to be 4 secondary consumers and 1 tertiary consumer, which is B. Alright, so B here will be our choice. Okay, question 36 says, a student investigated the effect of high temperature on the production of nitrate ions in the soil. 2 samples of soil were taken. 1 sample was heated to 100 degrees centigrade. All nitrates were completely removed from both soil samples. Ammonium ions were then added to both soil samples. After 2 weeks, both soil samples were tested for the presence of nitrate ions. The results are as shown here. Soil sample not heated to 100 degrees centigrade, ammonium was present, nitrate ions present. and soil sample heated to 100 degrees, nitrate ions are absent. Which statement explains the results? Okay, heating the soil broke down the nitrate ions. Heating the soil increased activity of denitrifying bacteria. Heating the soil killed nitrifying bacteria. Heating the soil killed nitrogen fixing bacteria. Alright, heating the soil killed nitrifying bacteria. It killed nitrifying bacteria, hence the ammonium was not broken down to what? To nitrates for a soil that was heated to 100 degrees. So our choice will be C. Number 37 says, which letter represents the lag phase in a population graph shown? So A here is lag phase, B this is exponential or log phase, and then C this is going to what? CD, it's going to a stationary phase, and at a point which is falling down there is going to be what? The death phase. Alright, so lag phase is definitely represented by letter A. Number 38 says, which term describes the number of different species living in an area? Is it biodiversity, conservation, ecosystem, or population? So population is number of species of the same kind in an area. Ecosystem, this is more of like interaction between organisms and the environment. Conservation is like maintenance, and biodiversity is a difference, okay, different species in an area. So 38 would be A. And then we go to number 39. Which source of pollution can cause eutrophication? So eutrophication is more like enrichment of nutrients into the water bodies, which results into growth of what? Aquatic plants, all right? Aquatic or... Okay, so what can cause eutrophication? Carbon dioxide causes greenhouse effect. Methane is also greenhouse effect. Non-biodegradable plastics just make the water polluted with a lot of plastics. And then sewage, yes, contains nutrients that can allow growth of these plant-like structures, organisms in the water. Okay, so D, sewage. Number 40 says, some of the processes involved in production of insulin by genetic modification are listed. One is cutting of bacterial plasmid with restriction enzymes, expression in bacteria of the human gene to make insulin, insertion of recombinant plasmids into bacteria, multiplication of bacteria containing recombinant plasmids. In which order do the processes take place? So first of all, when we are doing this genetic modification, we need to cut the desired DNAs using what? Restriction enzymes. So that should be point number 1. Cutting bacterial plasmids using what? Restriction enzyme. This is the first as it appears over here. Then after that, you insert the recombinant plasmids into a bacteria. Alright, so you take the human maybe insulin and the plasmids from a bacteria using a restriction enzyme. Then after you take them, these two, you join them together using DNA ligase. After joining them together, you form a recombinant DNA. Then after forming a recombinant DNA, you take the recombinant DNA, insert it into what? Into a bacteria. So that will be number 2. Then after you insert them, it means the bacteria will do what? Will multiply. Okay. Then after multiplying, you will see it expressing what? The human genes. So that is going to be A again. Yeah, and that was the last question for this paper. Thank you.